Hello everyone and welcome to Harv's World for part 6 of the Ravenport walkthrough for beginners. So at this point you should have your fields all harvested, your crops sold off, and you should have some money in the bank right now. I've got just shy of 200,000 and you've probably had the opportunity to do a lot more contracts. I hope you're taking that opportunity because that can put a lot of money in your bank. In fact, I've got a helper out doing a big fertilizer contract while we speak. So, yeah, keep those helpers working out there for you. Keep them bringing in the money. So this episode, I'm going to focus on a couple different things. The first is going to be a different type of crop or different types of crops and what we need to plant those. So, with that said, the second portion of this video is going to be focused on grass and grass work. What do we do with grass and why? Well, grass is an important crop in Farming Simulator, and you can make a lot of money just by growing and mowing grass. We're going to look into that here in just a little bit. Let's get started with the crops, though. So the smaller field here, I'm going to ask you to plant this with oats. And you know how to seed at this point. You know how to get this field ready with oats using our little John Deere seeder. But on our other field, we're going to try a different crop. And it gives me an opportunity to show you a difference between some equipment. So if we go into our store menu, our shop menu, and we look at our tools tab, down here at the bottom we see our seeders. This is where we went to buy our John Deere, which is right here on the end. Now if you look down here at the bottom, you can see that this will put wheat, barley, oats, canola, soybeans, oilseed radish, and grass in the field. You can seed those crops with this particular piece of equipment. Other thing to remember about this John Deere seeder is that it offers the possibility to seed directly, no previous cultivating or plowing necessary. It's a direct drill. Now, we also have what are known as planters, and they're up here on our menu. If we look at our planters, we look at our crops, we can see that they're different. So a seeder does what it does, but a planter does corn, sunflower, soybeans, and this is the only crossover. Soybeans will work for both. Corn, sunflower, soybeans, sugar beets, and cotton. Now, corn, sunflower, and soybeans, plant to your heart's content. Beware of sugar beets and cotton because they take specialized equipment to harvest and it's very expensive. We will cover that later on. We'll call it the advanced course, if you will. It's not really that much different from what we're doing. There are just a few extra steps you'll need to take and have a lot more money in the bank and a lot of time on your hands because sugar beets and cotton are very labor intensive. So with that said, if we want to plant corn, sunflowers, or additionally soybeans, we need a planter. The real distinction, probably in the real world most likely, is that wheat, barley, oats, things like that, they have small seeds. Grass seed is very tiny, whereas corn, sunflower, soybean, these would have much larger seeds. And so a seeder would plant small seeds. A planter would plant big fat seeds. With that said, we're going to need a planter to get the job done. Now, one thing to note about planters, at least in the base game, none of them are direct drills. Not a one. What does that mean for us? Well, that means we need to do some field prep before we can use this piece of equipment. Now, I've looked at all these, and I particularly like the Horsch Maestro 12. It's 9 meters wide. It's a little bit big and bulky for the small fields that we have, but we're kind of thinking of the future here. This will work in our fields, but more importantly, it will help us out when we start expanding and buying bigger fields. This will carry through and we'll still be able to work with it. So I'm going to go with that particular piece of equipment. Now remember, when you're picking equipment, make sure that your horsepower requirement matches your tractors. And we know our case is at 261 horsepower. This only needs 180, so we are good to go there. Now, one thing to note about horsepower requirements, meeting the bare minimum isn't always enough. So let's say I have a tractor that's 180 horsepower, and this Maestro needs 180 horsepower. What I would really be shooting for is about 200 to 250 horsepower. Because 180 horsepower on the tractor, this is going to be drawing off all that horsepower. So if you start going up a hill, you're going to slow down to a crawl because your tractor is giving all of its horsepower to the planter, and it's not going to have much horsepower to move. So keep that in mind as well. Just something to think about. So the first thing we're going to do, we are going to buy the Horsch planter. Nice thing about this also, it's 9,000 liters of seed and fertilizer. So it will hold a lot. We won't have to refill it too often. So I'm going to buy that bad boy for $93,000. Now, remember I said none of these planters are direct drills, which means we need to do field prep before we can use them. That gives me another opportunity to show you a little bit of the equipment in the store. Now, we know we have our plow, the Lizard 6M subsoiler, and we can use this to prep our field. No problem. But it is a plow. We don't really need to plow. We need to cultivate. Now, in the real world, it makes a big difference, plowing versus cultivating. The plowing disturbs the soil more. It can cause more soil erosion. So cultivating basically smooths out the top, breaks up large chunks, things like that, and reduces soil erosion. That's the biggest deal. But in the shop, we have plows, we have cultivators, we have disc harrows, we've got power harrows, and we've got subsoilers. Now, plows and subsoilers effectively do the exact same thing. The only difference is with a plow, you can create a new field, like we did when we made our big field. These plows will allow you to do that. A subsoiler will produce a plowing effect. So if it says your field needs plowed, you can do that with a subsoiler. But with a subsoiler in the base game, you cannot create a new field. So that's the difference between plows and subsoilers. Now we also have cultivators, disc harrows, and power harrows. Well, these three are all also the same. They're just slightly different tools. So if we take a look at a cultivator, and let's look at a decent sized one, say this Horsch. And this requires 300 horsepower to run. It's not that big, but it basically breaks up the top level of soil and smooths it out. If we go back and look at a disc harrow, it's actually can get the same effect with a slightly lower horsepower requirement, but it does exactly the same thing. And then if we look at power harrows, these are generally smaller. They require a PTO to run because they're actually diggers, basically. They start digging into the ground. But again, a cultivator prepares seed or fields for the next sowing. So these are all the same. Power harrow, disc harrow prepares fields for the next sowing. Cultivators prepares fields for the next sowing. So these three categories are the same. It's personal choice. Which one do you want to use? I kind of like the disc harrow, at least in this situation, because I can get more bang for my buck. I can get 6 meters with a lower horsepower requirement. So I think, just debating. Now the difference between these two, they're both 6 meters, but this one will plant grass and canola, but I've already got a planter and I've got a seeder. I don't need that, and I don't need anything much bigger. So I think for the sake of argument, that's 5 meters at 25, an additional meter for an additional $6,000. Yep, let's just go with the agri-mash. So we're going to grab this. No, I already changed my mind. Gonna go with the Amazon. It's a beauty. Yep, we're definitely going with that. Okay, this has some specialized equipment that we could use with it. We don't want to use with it. We don't have it right now, so we're just going to go with this for 31 grand. Okay, with all of that said, I'm going to run down to the store and pick up our new equipment. So I will see you when I get back. Oh, and I don't want to forget to drop off this weight, because I'm going to need that front attacher. There we go. Okay, now I will see you when I get back. Alright, just rolling back into the farm with our new equipment. And while I've got all this hooked up, I'm going to open the lid on my planter and pull up here next to my fertilizer and seed silo. Gonna get that loaded up with fertilizer. And oops. There we go. Open up that seed bin. There we go. Fill it up with seed. Okay, and I am just going to drop that right there. I'm going to drop off our brand new disc harrow cultivator. Now, there's nothing new, fancy, or terribly interesting about this particular cultivator, other than the fact that it does unfold, very similar to our plow over there. And again, remember, you could just use the plow to do this, but I'm trying to introduce you to some new types of equipment and new things to do with them. So, new ways to look. And if you've watched my video on field preparation, which I recommended, you have a pretty solid understanding of what I'm talking about right now. And I just noticed that I have a contract complete, so I am going to collect. And there's another $15,000 Field 7 fertilizing contract. I'm going to accept that. Okay, so here I am back with our disc harrow. I've got that contract. Got another fertilizer contract working. So I've made 20 grand while working on my own farm and buying equipment, and I'll make another 15 as soon as that contract is done. So just like any other piece of equipment, you're just going to drop this down to the ground and head on down the field. And you can see how that is changing the field as we trek along. Just like our plow, but it has a different texture. The plow has furrows. This, like I said, is just smoothing the top layer, loosening the soil, smoothing it back down so that we have easy access to planting. So I am going to get this field all cultivated and ready to go, and I will talk to you when the cultivating is done. See you in a minute. Okay, this just about wraps up cultivating this field. You can see how nice and lovely a texture it has on it right now. Now there are a couple spots down here that of course got bumped over because our field is still rough, and I know I promised to show you how to smooth out the rough spots, and I am going to do that, but it's a little bit complicated and kind of more of an advanced tutorial, and it uses the landscaping tool. But before you jump into the landscaping tool and try to do it yourself, let me warn you, when we do it, it's going to destroy all of this field, so we're going to have to recreate the field with our plow, which doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it'll take quite a bit of time. And I just felt like leaving the field as it is for right now so that we can get into more topics, more things that you can cover, that you can do as a beginner in Farming Simulator was the better choice. I will go over using the landscaping tool. Now, I'm not going to say I'm an expert because frankly, there's a lot going on there. A lot going on there. And there's no takebacks. Once you click a button in the landscaping tool, it's permanent. So you'll have to correct it. There's no undo function in the landscaping tool. So what I would recommend, if you want to play with it, just get a map, start on it as a farm manager, buy a plot of land that looks rough or hilly, and play around, because everything that you do in the landscaping tool also costs money. So with that said, we're going to grab our planter, and I recommend planting sunflowers. Now you can plant corn, you can plant soybeans. For the love of God, don't do sugar beets or or cotton yet, trust me. But this is no different than any other, other crop. We just get lined up, turn our sower on, drop her down, and we're going to head on down this field. And like so, you can see we are planting sunflowers. Sunflowers is another very high value crop in the farm simulator world. So it should net us a nice tidy profit. And again, just like everything else that I generally do, I'm just going to do a headland pass to open up this field and then basically start a back and forth. So we're going to cover the edges, and actually, if this works out the way I'd like it to, I'll probably get a helper to do most of this for me while I start teaching you about grass work. Now here's the problem with bigger, bulkier tools. They're not quite as easy to move around. But that's okay, because we need the practice on that anyway, right? Right. Now this was the point I was talking about horsepower and equipment. You see how I'm going up this hill, and I have just slowed down dramatically. I have enough horsepower in this tractor, but just barely. And remember, I believe this was 180 horsepower requirement on the planter. And this tractor has about 261, and it was still bogging down just because the planter is taking up so much of the horsepower available. If I only had, if I had a tractor that was at 180 horsepower and the planter was running 180 horsepower, I would have dropped probably to a mile an hour trying to get up that stretch of hill right there. So, yeah, nice to see there was an example I could give you on exactly what I was talking about. Helps to bring things into perspective. Now, one thing to keep in mind, please feel free to ask me any questions that you have. I love to answer questions. I love helping new players get started. Absolutely love it. One thing to keep in mind through this playthrough is I'm not doing anything that can't be done on console and PC. Now, if you're a PC player, maybe you know, maybe you don't, but PC players kind of have free reign when it comes to Farming Simulator. You get a lot more options when it comes to mods and opportunities. I mean, even maps. Farming Simulator maps, a lot of them are only available for PC. And I understand the frustration that the console players feel. But there's still a lot. I mean, people are focusing more and more on making sure that whatever they produce, mod-wise, is available to everyone. But there's also a lot of mods out there that are only available for PC. And the reason I mention this is because we've got a new player following along the series, and he asked me about GPS, which is a real world function. You know, this type of tractor in the real world might have GPS installed on it. The farmer would activate it and it would drive his tractor for him. There is a mod called Guidance Steering by Wobster, but it's only available to PC players. And again, I'm not doing anything in this walkthrough that isn't available to everyone. But feel free to ask me questions about anything. So with that said, I am going to pop a helper on this. They should be able to manage the rest of this field, no problem. I'll come back and touch up because that's what we do with helpers. And we're going to talk about grass. So if you'll notice, we've got grass everywhere. Everywhere, all around the edges of our fields, there's plenty of grass. And you can even plant grass. All of this grass is available to use. You can come in and mow this grass and use it. The difference between a field planted with grass and this grass, on a field planted with grass, you get a much higher yield because you can fertilize it, make sure it's got lime, the whole 9 yards. Nice thing is, once you plant a field with grass, you get it fertilized twice like we do any other crop. It grows up, you mow it when it's ready to harvest, and all you have to do is put one more application of fertilizer on, it grows back and you can mow it again. So it stays forever, it continues to regrow, and you can just keep using that field's grass over and over. Now all of this stuff around here, if you mow it, it's going to regrow too, but again, you can't fertilize it, you can't increase its quantity like you can with a field of grass. So with that said, I think the best thing to do, because there are contracts available for grass work and there are always these baling contracts, the first thing we're going to do, small contract just to introduce. This requires us to mow grass in field 20, dry it with the tedder and bale it, and take the bales to the barn. Now, this gives me an opportunity to explain a bunch more equipment and show you exactly what they're talking about. So I am going to borrow items because I don't have that equipment. And man, do they have a lot of equipment for us to borrow. So I'm going to borrow those items. And field 20 is right down here, not too far from the shop, right next to the restaurant actually. So we will visit the shop and look at all this stuff they have in front of us. Holy shnikes. What is all this crap? Well, I'll tell you. It's a little bit of everything, and we're going to go through all of it. By the time we're done, you're going to have a nice, solid handle on grass work. Now, as I'm hooking up this equipment, like so, this is a front mower. Now you can also put it on the back, but most often it's run on the front, used to mow grass. And if you haven't figured it out by now, this is a rear mower. And so if we look at our shop, in our tools menu, we actually have a category for mowers. And we have many, many options. Okay, in the base game, we don't have many options. Let me rephrase that. Again, horsepower is important. And you have to keep in mind that you're going to be using multiple tools. I mean, at least we are. We've got this New Holland mower, disc bind. It runs 90 horsepower. And we've also got this Pottinger front mower that runs 70. So we're going to be running 160 horsepower worth of equipment. And they've provided us with a tractor, a good large tractor that should handle that with no problem. So we're going to get these mowers down to field 20, which isn't too far away. Another reason I wanted to grab this particular contract. Try not to smash into that car. And yes, at some point we are going to have to move all of this equipment to field 20. Nice thing is we don't have to take it back. I think this is going to be the best way to get there. Now, grass contracts like this one are no different than any other contract. Anything left over is ours to keep. So, what do we do? Well, I've got this mower on the back. The first thing I want to do is unfold it. Like so. It's going to tilt, and I'm going to turn that on with the B key. Now I need to go to my front, switch equipment to front. I need to unfold and turn that on also. Now I can lower both pieces of equipment at the same time. If I hold Control and hit V, it's going to drop down the front mower and the rear mower at the same time. And as you can see, our rear mower is going to sweep out to our left. Our front mower is going to mow right in front of us. And this should cover a nice wide path. Now, we are technically tasked only with mowing the field, but because we get anything that's left over, we want to mow as much of this as it will let us get away with. So everything around the edges, we want to scoop up all the grass we can manage. And it's actually letting us get away with a good wide amount. It doesn't like me running out quite this far. Nope, doesn't like that at all. Yes, I know, it's only available for contract work. Am I back in the field yet? Yeah, it looks like it. Okay, good. Only just barely, though. Okay, so at this point, what do we need to do? Well, we just need to keep mowing. Keep mowing, get this whole grass field mowed up. And once we're done mowing all of this, we'll check back in. And this is really no different than any other field work. It's just a matter of back and forth, up and down, round and round, and getting it done. So again, I'll see you when the grass is mowed. See you in a minute. Okay, so as you can see, this grass is cut. All of it. And I've gone around the edges to push it out just as far as I possibly can, because any grass that isn't on the field that we can cut and collect, well, that's going to be ours to use and make money off of. So when you're doing grass contracts, make sure that you always get everything. Oops. Now I'm just going to drop this equipment here because I don't want to deal with it. Be much easier for me to go grab another piece of equipment if I don't have to tow crap around. Efficiency is the name of the game. Okay, so as I'm headed back, let's talk about grass a little bit. What can we do with grass? Well, we can keep grass as grass, cut grass. We can bale it. We can store it in our silo. It can be used as animal feed for certain animals. We can also, as is the case with this contract, make hay. Now, how do we make hay out of grass? Because we just cut the grass. Well, we need a tool called a tedder. That's what this equipment is. That's what this piece of equipment is. If we look at our shop menu, we can see it's got its own special category, tedders. A tedder turns grass around so it can dry faster. So we are going to go back to our field, and now we need to run around the field, letting this thing flip our grass around. I'll show you exactly what I mean here in just a second, because it's not going to take long to get back there. And one other thing we can do with grass, we can turn grass into silage. Now, silage is fermented vegetation, for lack of a better definition. It's vegetation that's been wrapped up, usually in plastic of some kind, and allowed to ferment so that it gains nutritional value, and it's often used for feed, especially for cattle. Okay, so we just unfold our tedder, we turn it on, and we can see these little things start spinning around here. We drop it down, and it's going to start hitting this grass and flipping it. You see how the texture is changing there? It's a much lighter green. Now, in the real world, it does not work like this, of course. But that lighter green is now hay. So this is automatically turning our grass into hay. We're just going to have to cover the whole field. Luckily, it's quick. And just make sure I'm not missing any. No, I had it good. I just wasn't sure. Okay, so if you're working on a grass field with me right now, just finish covering it all. Make sure you hit all of this dark green grass and turn it into light green grass, also known as hay. So we'll be back together in just a second. So at this point, you should have a widely dispersed grass laden with hay. Lots and lots of hay. I think that pretty well covers it for me. So again, I'm just going to drop this tool off, and it's time to go back and get the next round. Because one thing about making hay, it can be a lengthy process. And that's another reason I picked a small contract to show this to you, just so it didn't get too drawn out. And this just happened to be really close to the shop to go pick up more tools. So, what do we need next? Well, the next thing we need is something to gather all of this hay up. And that is going to be this big old tool right here. This is known as a windrower. Again, we will go to our shop, and windrowers also have their own category. A windrower arranges grass, hay, or straw in rows, windrows, which can then be scooped up by forage wagons or balers. Now, a windrower is also known as a rake. A lot of people just simply call them rakes. And we are going to find out exactly what this particular rake does. Now, windrow is one of those bits of farming terminology that at least I wasn't I wasn't clear on when I first started playing. I did not grow up on a farm. I have very limited exposure to farming. One of the reasons I find this game so fascinating is that it's given me exposure to so many new things that may not be perfectly real world, but are close enough that I get to learn about them. So, first thing we're going to do is unfold our windrower. Going to hit the X key to unfold, and like any tool, oh, this one is not powered. It looks like it runs on its own accord. So if I lift it up, drop it down, there we go. Okay, so as we run down the field here, I can see these wheels are spinning, and what they're doing, they are raking all of this grass into one nice, neat, or all this hay, I should say, because it's hay now, into one nice, neat windrow. Like so. You can see the pile there. Now, I will say it's best to do these in actual rows. It's a lot easier when you start baling. So yeah, anytime you have anything spread out all over a field like this, a windrower is your ticket for getting it sorted. Alright, so that's going to wrap up the windrowing. The raking, that'll take care of that. And I'm going to drop off my rake right over here. I'll even fold it up first. And back to the store for even more equipment. And grass work is lucrative, but it does require a significant investment in equipment. And I'll bet you can guess what the next phase of this little process is. Yes, you're absolutely right. Baling. Baling is the next step in this drama. This is the New Holland round baler. It wouldn't be my first choice for bales, but it still does a decent job. If again we go into our store menu under tools, we have baling technology. If we look at baling technology, the first baler on our list is the New Holland. This creates round bales. We also have multiple other pieces of technology here. This Kuhn LSP 1290, well, that is a square baler. Square balers are nice because you don't have to unload them. They unload automatically. So as they produce their bales, they just kick them out and drop them on the ground. Round balers are manual, and you have to manually unload them. So there's that. Now the rest of this stuff down here we will cover at a later time. Basically, it's for bale transportation. This is a bale collection trailer. This is a bale collector. This is a silage wrapper or a bale wrapper. So you would come in, wrap your bale, and it would turn it into silage. But for now, what we care about is our New Holland Roll Belt 150 round baler, getting it back and into the field. Now about the windrowing, honestly, it takes a little bit of practice getting a feel for the width of the tools and such. If you leave bits and bobs of hay on the field somewhere, don't get them into perfect windrows, it doesn't matter that much. Again, it does take a little bit of practice, but you'll get the hang of that soon enough. Okay, so just like any other tool for our baler, we need to turn it on. And if you can see right there, there's a head spinning when you have to drop that head down. And we are ready to go. So now all we need to do is follow right along our windrow, and our baler is going to scoop that hay up off the ground. You can see it disappearing. Now bales are always 4,000 liters, at least in the base game. Can you get bigger bales than that? Sure, but it requires mods, so keep that in mind. Now I did do a couple of windrows along the outer edges here just because. Oh, is it really going to screw that up for me? Yes. Yes, it is. It's not going to allow me to get that grass. Okay, well, I can fix that. I think I can fix that. Regardless, even if I can't, not that big of a deal, but I'm pretty sure I can. So anyhow, we're just going to keep scooping up our hay. Now at some point, you're going to hear this baler start beeping at you, and it's going to stop picking up hay. And what it wants you to do is unload. So we're going to hit Y. It's going to crack open, drop that bale out onto the ground, Hit Y again to close it back up. And away we go for our next bale. Now that's what I was saying about the square balers are nice because you don't have to stop and unload. You can just keep going and they will just keep kicking those bales right out. Wow, that was quick. That was really quick. But one other thing to keep in mind is with a round baler that requires you to unload, you can move these bales around if you want to and just unload at a different location. So if I just wanted to unload, keep these bales all in one spot, I could just come down here and unload my bale next to this one. Like so. And just go to town again. So at this point, we are going to keep making bales. Yep, so just keep working your field, keep scooping up your grass, whatever it is you're doing. Oh, I've got a bale ready. And I will see you when all of our bales are on the field. Okay, so I just finished scooping up the last of my grass. Hopefully you got all of yours. Let's see, we got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Lost count already. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Looks like about 14 bales on the field. And there's another place you can check on that if you're interested. If you go to, actually no, it's this little television looking sign. We can see in this session. Oh no, for contracts it won't tell us. Never mind. But if you're making your own bales, you can go there and see how many bales you've created. I really think we've got about 14. So, what do we do now? Well, we gotta do what the contract tells us to do. And our contract says we need to take these bales to the barn. Where's the barn? Right over here. We'll go ahead and tag that. Now I'll tell you, this next little bit, I wouldn't do it. Now, we need to take the bales to the barn. We have to. We need to complete the contract. But the transport that they've given us to do this with, I have played with these things, and to be honest, and completely fair, the physics in Farming Simulator is far from perfect, especially when it comes to bale handling and pallet handling. It's not good. It's okay. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a great game. This is just one aspect that, well, modders have gone a long way toward fixing. And we don't even need mods to fix this particular issue. The issue here is that this particular bale collector, and that's what these are bale collectors. Bale transporters. They don't work well because the physics with the bales are so incredibly poor. And I will show you exactly what I mean as I run into the restaurant. So these things unfold like so. And the intent behind them is that you sneak up on a bale. Let's get our front one. Now, with my mouse, I can lower this down to the ground. I can slide these two prongs on the left, like so, up on this bale. And then I can pick it up like so. And I'll go find another bale. And try to line up with it and then just knock it all over creation. Okay, so grabbing another bale here. Drop these down again. Do a much better job of lining up with it than I'm doing right now. Oh, I know what I've done. Okay. I was tilted a little bit. So you see these tilt like this. They also move up and down like so. So that's why I was pushing that bale instead of... There we go. Okay, so this is the idea. You lift them up like this, tilt them back. You see what the bale's doing there? Bouncing around like that. And then the idea is you fold them up in here like so. And then we can go get two more like this. Now one thing you can do, make sure they're tilted back as far as you can get them. Because if they're not, they're going to go bouncing all over creation. And, you know, maybe I haven't given these enough of a chance because, well, I had such a struggle with them early on that, you know, they may have been corrected a little bit and I didn't know about it. Okay, so that's one. That's four, technically. Okay, so we drop that bad boy back down. Oh, there it went. Okay, lift it up, fold it up. You know, if only they had a strap on them or something. That would be better. Because then that would actually hold them in place, but they don't. So, okay, now we need to drive, hopefully, with these things, staying where they're at, to the barn. And I know from personal experience, the barn is in this direction. We can see our big green beacon of light up there. Hopefully I can sneak down to the road. Yeah, that's not too bad right there. Okay, good. So far, so good. And the turnoff is just right about here. And I'm definitely not going to get the bales there if I crash into electrical poles. Yeah, so to be fair, these are actually working much better than my original experiences have been. So, you know, if you want to use this type of thing, give it a shot. There's much better ways to move bales. But not in the base game. I mean, we could load these onto a flatbed trailer and strap them down. And that's what I would normally do. Okay, two bales are going in. Are those really turned off? Yes. There's our interactive zone marker there. There we go. So there's two. Okay. So that's 4. Where are we at? So we're halfway done with our contract. Okay, so I'm going to go grab more bales. You're going to go grab more bales if you're working on this with me. And we are going to finish up this contract and find a better route to get over here. So I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, so I'm bringing what I think is going to be the end of this contract. Yep. Contract on field 20 finished. So I still have 2 bales here. And I've got 2 bales left on the field. So that's going to leave 4 bales left over for me. 16,000 liters of hay. That is outstanding because we're going to keep that. Like I said, I'm going to take, in the next episode, I'm going to take a little bit of a look at animals. And this hay will help us out because we can use this for animal feed. So what I'm going to do at this point is gather up the last 2 bales, run them back down to the farm. You have a brief introduction to grass work. There's more to learn, and we'll touch on that a little bit more in the future, especially when it comes to silage. Now, I will tell you right now, I have a whole series of tutorials about making silage. So if you're interested, you might check those out. It could be some help to you in learning and understanding more about grass work and what it's good for. One thing that silage is good for, people will make silage in mass quantities. And I mean mass quantities. I've seen millions of liters of silage made because it's good money. And that has to do with the biogas plant. Something else that we will take a look at in the not too distant future, in a future episode, and of course. But there you go. We've given you some more information about planters. We've given you information, or I've given you information about grass work, getting started with grass work. And keep in mind that, I don't want to go down there. Keep in mind that, those mowers, like I said, you can get a mower, you can take it back to your farm, you can mow all of the grass around the farm. You can use a tedder and turn it into hay if you want. You can keep it as grass. You can bale the grass and then use a bale wrapper to turn it into silage. Silage, like I said, is good for feeding cattle, and you can also make good money off of silage and silage bales. So something else to keep in mind when it comes to grass work. And we learned about planters and planting, corn, sunflowers, things of that nature. And I don't know about you, but I've got a fully planted field right now. Hopefully you do too. With that said, I think that's going to do it for this part of the Ravenport walkthrough for beginners. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. If there's anything more you'd like to know about, anything you feel like I haven't touched on enough, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to address that for you. So, I appreciate you taking a look at this tutorial. And until next time, take care.